Lonely rancher won a pregnant bride in a poker game, unaware she'd change his life forever. Ethan McCall had lived on the wide Montana ranch for as long as he could remember, yet somehow it never truly felt full. The land stretched for miles, rich with grasslands and soft hills that rolled like waves frozen in time. In the early mornings, fog hung low across the fields, and the sun rose behind the mountains with a slow, warm glow. To anyone who saw it for the first time, the place looked peaceful, almost magical. But to Ethan, the silence carried a different weight. It was the kind of quiet that reminded a man of how alone he really was. He wasn't always by himself. The ranch once belonged to his parents. Hard-working people who believed every problem could be solved with a strong heart and steady hands. Ethan had grown up learning how to fix fences, calm nervous horses, bottle feed weak calves, and face long winters without complaint. He admired his parents deeply, but both passed away within a few years of each other, leaving the ranch entirely in his care. Since then, Ethan felt the land grow larger, the days longer, and his own world smaller. At 36, he had the features of someone who spent most of his life under the sun. His skin held the warm bronze color of a man who labored outdoors, and faint lines touched the corners of his eyes from years of squinting against light and wind. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, often messy from working with the animals or dealing with stubborn equipment. People around town would say he was handsome in a quiet, rugged way, but Ethan never paid attention to such remarks. He believed compliments were only air. Nice to hear, but not something that changed anything real. His days followed a steady rhythm. He woke before dawn, brewed a pot of strong black coffee, and stood by the small kitchen window while sipping it. The view rarely changed, endless fields meeting the sky. But he found comfort in watching the world slowly wake up. After breakfast, he tended to the chores, feeding the cattle, checking the water troughs, repairing anything broken, and riding out to survey the land. Ranching didn't allow for laziness. Something always demanded attention. Despite the constant work, Ethan didn't complain. He felt a sense of loyalty to the ranch. It was his family's legacy, the one thing he had left from the people he missed every day. Keeping the ranch alive made him feel connected to them, as if they still walked beside him. Yet, even loyalty couldn't hide the truth. It was getting harder to manage everything alone. Some years, the cattle brought in good money. Other years, storms or poor market prices made profits thin. Ethan stretched every dollar, repaired equipment instead of replacing it, and worked longer hours than most men around him. People admired his determination, but admiration did not fix the fact that he came home to an empty house every night. He didn't mind solitude, or so he often told himself. He liked the stillness of the evenings, the soft hum of the wind brushing against the window panes, the comfort of reading an old book, or listening to the radio while the fireplace crackled nearby. But sometimes, after the long days ended and the sky grew dark, a quiet ache settled inside him, one he tried not to think about too much. It wasn't just loneliness. It was the sense of having no one to share life with, no one to talk to after a hard day, no one to laugh with, no one to remind him that the world was bigger than cattle and fences. He wondered what it would feel like to come home and hear another voice greet him, to have a warm meal waiting, to listen to gentle laughter echo through the rooms that now felt too big for one person. But Ethan wasn't a man who actively searched for companionship. He wasn't shy, but he was cautious, the kind of person who spoke only when he had something meaningful to say. He had tried dating years ago, but most women he met dreamed of city life, not ranch life. Others admired him, but didn't truly understand the quiet depth of his heart. Slowly, He accepted that maybe love wasn't meant for him. Maybe his life was meant to be simple and solitary. Yet, even with this belief, there was one place he visited to ease the longer evenings: the old saloon in town. The saloon wasn't rowdy. It was a modest gathering spot with wooden floors, warm lighting, and the soft hum of country music drifting from a small radio near the bar. Locals came not to make trouble, but to unwind after long days. Some played cards, others shared stories, and many simply enjoyed the company. Ethan wasn't there to socialize much. He mostly came for the routine and calmness. Every Thursday night, he joined a small group of older men for a friendly poker game. They weren't high-stakes gamblers, just folks passing the time with mild laughter and harmless teasing. The men respected Ethan, even if he didn't talk much. They liked his honesty, his steady presence, and the way he never gloated when he won or complained when he lost. Ethan found comfort in these evenings. The saloon felt like a second home, a place where he could sit among others without feeling pressured to be someone he wasn't. The glow of the lanterns, the soft scratch of cards across the table, the smell of warm stew drifting from the kitchen, all of it eased the tightness he carried inside. Still, when the night ended and Ethan drove back to the ranch, the quiet always greeted him again. One particular evening, as he returned home, Ethan paused before stepping into the house. The moon hung bright and full in the sky, bathing the ranch in pale silver light. The cattle in the distance moved gently, their soft sounds drifting toward him. The air was crisp but not cold, carrying the earthy scent of grass and soil. He stood there for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling both grateful for the peaceful world around him and painfully aware of how alone he was in it. Inside, the house was neat and well kept, but it lacked warmth. It lacked life. Every room felt like it was waiting for someone who never came. He walked into the kitchen, poured himself another cup of coffee even though it was late, and sat at the small wooden table. He traced the grain patterns with his thumb, thinking about his parents, his responsibilities, and the uncertain future of the ranch. He wasn't the kind of man who asked for miracles, but on nights like this he wondered what it would be like if fate gave him something unexpected, a chance perhaps for a different life. But such thoughts felt too hopeful, too far from reality. Ethan sighed and set his cup aside. He didn't believe in sudden changes. Life on a ranch was steady, predictable, and shaped by the seasons rather than dreams. Little did he know that life was already shifting, slowly guiding him towards something he never saw coming. For now, though, Ethan simply prepared for another day. He checked the locks on the doors, fed the barn cat who waited patiently by the entrance, and turned off the kitchen light. The house settled into stillness again, warm but quiet. As he lay down on his bed and listened to the wind tapping gently against the windows, he imagined the same routine waiting for him in the morning. He didn't know that within a short time someone would enter his life who would soften that silence completely. Someone who would bring not just company, but a kind of warmth he had long forgotten. Someone who would challenge everything he thought he understood about solitude and purpose. But for now, he slept peacefully, unaware of how quickly life could change. The next morning, he woke before dawn as usual. The sky was still dark, but hints of light touched the horizon. He brewed his coffee, wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, and stepped out onto the porch. The air felt cool against his skin, and birds gradually began to chirp as the world stirred awake. He sipped the warm drink slowly, allowing himself a few moments of calm before the day began. Even in the quiet, he could feel something different in the air. Not a sound, not a shift in the wind, but a faint sense of something approaching. He brushed the feeling aside, thinking it was simply the changing season. He had no idea that destiny was already moving toward him from miles away, weaving events he could not foresee. Soon a stranger would enter his life at a poker table, followed by a pregnant woman who would challenge every lonely belief he held. Soon the ranch that felt too quiet would echo with new footsteps, new voices, and new hope. But Ethan didn't know any of that yet. All he knew was that he had work to do, fences to check, and a day ahead like any other. He finished his coffee, set the cup down gently, and walked toward the barn to begin his chores. The morning sun peeked over the hills, casting soft golden light across the ranch. Ethan looked out at the glowing fields and breathed deeply, feeling both the weight of his responsibilities and the calmness of the open land. He believed his life would continue exactly as it had been, quiet, steady, and solitary. He didn't realize that within just a short time, everything would change. Everything. The air inside the town saloon felt warmer than usual that night, almost as if the lanterns glowed a little brighter and the conversations carried a little louder. Ethan arrived the same way he always did, steady steps, shoulders slightly tense from a long day of ranch work, hat tilted low to keep the wind off his face. He didn't come often, only on evenings when the loneliness felt too wide to ignore. Thursdays were his one small escape from the silence of the ranch, and he valued these nights more than he ever admitted out loud. The saloon doors creaked as he pushed them open. The familiar mix of warm light, quiet chatter, and soft country music welcomed him. The place was simple, with wooden walls, framed photos from decades ago, and shelves lined with jars of nuts and old bottles. A few couples sat in corners sharing whispered conversations, and a group of older gentlemen gathered around the stove, laughing at a joke one of them had just told. Ethan nodded politely at those who greeted him. He didn't speak much, but people liked him. He had a calm way about him that made others feel comfortable. He walked toward the back corner, where the poker table waited. Cards, chips, and shared stories were a Thursday tradition in that corner. At the table sat the usual group: Mr. Brookley, a retired postmaster with a cheerful smile, Hank, a mechanic known for his sharp wit, and Thomas, a quiet teacher who enjoyed cards more than he enjoyed talking. They all looked up when Ethan approached, and their faces brightened. "Evening, Ethan," Hank said, tapping the seat next to him. Thought you weren't gonna make it." Ethan gave a faint smile. "Long day. But I'm here." He took his seat, shuffled his worn deck of cards, and joined the game. The sounds of cards sliding against the table, soft laughter, and gentle conversation wrapped the group in an easy comfort. These nights never felt tense. They didn't play for big money. It was all about companionship and passing time with people who understood the simple joys of life. But that night, something unusual happened. Around an hour into the game, the saloon door opened again, letting in a gust of cold wind and a stranger. The man looked rough, but not in a dangerous way, more like someone tired from travel. His clothes were dusty, his boots worn, and his blonde hair fell unevenly across his forehead. He walked with uneven steps, as if he had been on the road far too long without proper rest. A thin backpack hung from his shoulder. He scanned the room for a moment, then approached the bar and ordered a drink. Ethan barely noticed at first. He kept his focus on the game until the stranger turned around and spotted the poker table. "Room for one more?" the man asked, his voice low but steady. The group exchanged glances. They didn't usually invite newcomers to join mid-game, especially not someone who looked so worn down. But something about the man's tone felt sincere. Brookley shrugged with a kind smile. "Sure, if you know how to play." "Oh, I know how," the stranger replied. He pulled up a chair, sat down, and introduced himself softly. "Name's Carl." Ethan nodded courteously but kept his expression neutral. He didn't dislike newcomers, but he liked to study them first. Something about Carl seemed unsettled, as if he carried worries bigger than the backpack slung over his shoulder. His eyes darted around from time to time, observing everything, as though searching for reassurance. The game continued. At first, Carl played cautiously, betting small amounts, observing the others. But as minutes passed, his bets grew bolder, too bold. He lost more than he won, yet he kept raising the stakes. Hank leaned back in his chair and whispered to Ethan, "Fella's either unlucky or desperate." Ethan didn't answer, but he silently agreed. Carl's hands trembled slightly when he placed his next bet. His face looked tense, as if something important depended on the outcome of each round. He wasn't dangerous, but he was clearly troubled. The group around the table subtly adjusted their posture, watching him with more attention. In just an hour, Carl had lost nearly all the money he placed on the table. He exhaled heavily and rubbed his forehead. "That's it," Thomas said kindly. "You can stop for the night, friend. No need to lose more." But Carl shook his head. I have something else, something I can put in." Ethan's brows knitted together. The others exchanged uneasy glances. In a small town like this, nobody bet anything unusual. Money, small items, nothing more. But Carl looked as though he had run out of every ordinary option. Carl reached for his backpack and unzipped it halfway. "I'm traveling with someone," he said softly. "A woman, pregnant. I promised her I'd get us somewhere safe, that I'd find a place to settle. But we're out of money, out of food, and out of options." The table grew silent. Everyone listened. She's resting in the wagon outside," he continued. "Hasn't eaten well these last few days. I thought maybe coming into town would help. Thought I'd win something. But luck's not with me." Mr. Brookley frowned. "What are you saying, son?" Carl swallowed, eyes lowering in shame. "I want to wager her safe passage. If someone here wins, they take responsibility for her. Make sure she has shelter, food, and safety. I can't give her that anymore. Not now." Hank nearly dropped his cards. Thomas shook his head, startled. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest, not anger, but deep concern. "Carl," Ethan said calmly, "you can't place a person as a bet. That isn't right." Carl raised both hands quickly. "I'm not giving her away like property. I'm asking someone better than me to help her. She deserves someone steady, someone with a home. Whoever wins, they'd be doing her a kindness. I'll leave once I know she's somewhere she'll be okay." The words came out broken, sincere, filled with a kind of helplessness that silenced the entire table. It wasn't a cruel wager. It was the desperate plea of a man who believed he had nothing left to offer. The others protested gently. "There must be another way. Ask the sheriff. We can collect money for you." But Carl shook his head firmly. "No, what she needs isn't money. She needs a place to stay. Someone patient, someone dependable, someone who won't walk away." His gaze drifted around the table before landing on Ethan, almost instinctively. Ethan looked back, confused. "Why me?" he wondered. Carl continued. "I've watched you all evening. You're calm. You're steady. You're a man who doesn't leave things unfinished. She needs someone exactly like that. Ethan felt the weight of the words land on him. He didn't ask for this. He didn't want responsibility for a stranger, much less a pregnant woman he had never met. Yet something inside him stirred quietly. The others hesitated, unsure if the wager should continue. It was not typical, not even close. But Carl's sincerity made it clear he wasn't trying to trick or harm anyone. He was simply a man trying to save someone he couldn't care for anymore. Finally, after minutes of debate, it was agreed. The bet would not be for ownership or control, but for responsibility. Whoever won would promise shelter and safety to the woman until she decided otherwise. Nothing more. Most of the men stepped back, uncomfortable taking part in such a round. Only Carl and Ethan remained focused, a silent understanding forming between them. Carl looked at Ethan. "Play me one last hand. If you win, she goes with you. If I win, I'll keep trying on my own." Ethan hesitated. He didn't believe in destiny or fate, but something about this moment felt different, felt guided. He thought of the quiet ranch, the empty rooms, the growing sense that something was missing from his life. Still, he wanted to make sure. "Does she know you're making this offer?" Ethan asked, gently. Carl nodded. She told me if I found someone kind, someone stable, she'd trust my decision." There was a softness in his voice, an honesty that made Ethan believe him. "Then deal," Ethan said quietly. The cards were shuffled. The room felt still, as if even the air paused to watch. Every card drawn tightened the moment. When the final card fell, there was no dramatic gasp, no loud celebration, only a breathless quiet. Ethan had won. Carl closed his eyes, relief and sorrow mixing in his expression. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't know what you're saving her from." Ethan didn't feel triumphant. He felt something else entirely, a deep sense of responsibility settling into his heart. He didn't know the woman, didn't know her story, didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but he knew one thing: he would not fail her. Carl stood, pushed his chair back slowly, and gestured toward the door. "She's outside. Her name is Mara." Ethan rose, his heartbeat steady but heavy, unsure of what he was about to face. But something in his chest whispered softly. This moment would change everything. And he didn't yet understand how true that was. Ethan followed Carl out of the saloon, the sound of soft music fading behind them as the door swung shut. The night air felt cool, brushing gently against his face after the warmth inside. A few lanterns glowed along the street, their soft light stretching across the wooden boards of the walkway. The sky overhead was clear, dotted with stars that shimmered quietly above the small Montana town. Carl walked toward an old wagon tied beside a water trough. A single lantern hung from its side, casting a warm circle of light over the worn wooden wheels. Ethan noticed how carefully Carl moved, as if each step carried a mix of worry and hope. When they reached the wagon, Carl paused and placed a gentle hand on the side panel, his voice lowered to a whisper. "Mara," he called softly, "there's someone here you should meet." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Ethan stood perfectly still, unsure of what to expect. Then, from inside the wagon, he heard a small rustling sound, cloth shifting, someone adjusting their position. A moment later, a woman slowly stepped out, steadying herself against the wagon edge. She looked tired, but there was a quiet strength about her. Moonlight softened her features, revealing gentle eyes framed by loose, dark hair that fell around her shoulders. She wore a simple dress and a shawl wrapped carefully around her body. Her hands rested on her rounded belly, a clear sign of pregnancy. She blinked up at Ethan, her expression curious but cautious. Carl spoke first. "Mara." This is Ethan McCall. He's agreed to help. Her gaze shifted to Carl, searching his face for clarity. "Help how?" Carl swallowed, emotions tightening his voice. "He'll give you a safe place to stay, shelter, food, a home for as long as you want. I can't keep you safe anymore." Mara looked down briefly, absorbing the words. Then she lifted her eyes again, this time studying Ethan directly. He felt himself straighten under her calm, steady gaze. He didn't know what to say at first. He wasn't accustomed to strangers analyzing him so closely. But something in her eyes, something soft yet strong, made him want to reassure her. "You're welcome at my ranch," he said quietly. "You won't owe me anything. You can rest there, stay warm, eat well. That's all." Her lips parted slightly, as though she didn't expect kindness spoken so plainly. She glanced at Carl again, and Ethan saw the gentle connection between them. Familiar, but not romantic. More like two people who had survived something difficult together. Carl nodded as if giving her permission to trust. "He's a good man, Mara. Better than me. Better than I can be right now." Mara took a slow breath before turning her attention fully to Ethan. "Ah, thank you," she said softly. "I will accept your offer if you are sure you want to make it." Ethan nodded. "I am." The words felt firm and true inside him, surprising even himself. Carl stepped forward, touching Mara's shoulder with genuine care. "You'll be all right now," he murmured. Then he turned to Ethan. "Thank you, truly." The moment felt heavy, but not uncomfortable, just full of meaning. After a quiet goodbye, Carl walked away from the wagon, heading toward the edge of town where the road disappeared into darkness. Ethan stood beside Mara, both watching until Carl's figure became a small silhouette and then finally faded from view. Mara exhaled slowly, as though letting go of something she had been holding inside for too long. "I suppose this is where a new chapter begins," she said, her voice soft. Ethan nodded. "Are you all right to ride in the truck?" "The ranch is a little ways out." "Yes," she said. "I can manage." He helped her into his old pickup truck, making sure she sat comfortably with her shawl tucked neatly around her shoulders. When he started the engine, the truck rumbled to life with a familiar sound. Mara watched the town grow smaller as they drove away, her eyes quietly observing the passing scenery. For a few minutes, neither spoke. The road stretched ahead, smooth and calm beneath the starry sky. Ethan wondered what thoughts filled her mind. Fear, worry, hope, or simply exhaustion. She broke the silence first. "You didn't have to say yes." "I know," Ethan replied. "Then, why did you?" He shifted slightly behind the wheel, thinking. It wasn't a question he could answer with simple words, but he did his best. "Your friend looked like a man who cared," Ethan said. "And you looked like someone who needed a safe place. I had the space. It felt right." Mara looked at him for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Not everyone would make such a choice. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't think of his decision as something grand. It just felt natural, something his parents would have done without question. The rest of the drive passed quietly until the soft outline of the ranch appeared. The fences glowed faintly under the moonlight, and the barn stood like a gentle giant on the land. Warm light shone from the house window, welcoming them. When Ethan parked, he walked around to help Mara down carefully. She stepped onto the ground slowly, steadying herself as she looked around. "This is beautiful," she whispered. Ethan followed her gaze over the rolling fields and small clusters of trees that surrounded the property. "It's simple, but it's home." He led her inside the house. Mara took in the wooden floors, warm lantern light, and the cozy feel of a place well cared for, even if sparsely decorated. "You can have the guest room," Ethan said, pointing down the hallway. "There's a clean bed, warm blankets, and a small closet. Tomorrow I'll bring extra things from town if you need them." "Thank you," she said softly. "You're very kind." He simply nodded, unsure how to respond to gratitude spoken with such sincerity. He wasn't used to it. After settling her in the room, Ethan brought her a cup of warm tea. Mara accepted it with both hands, breathing in the gentle scent before taking a small sip. "This is nice," she murmured. "I haven't had anything warm in days." Ethan felt a quiet ache in his chest at her words. "If you need anything at all, just ask." She nodded gratefully. After drinking more tea, she leaned back slightly, resting one hand on her stomach. "Do you mind if I ask what your ranch is like during the day?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "Busy, quiet, a lot of routine. Animals to feed, fences to check, land to look after." "That sounds peaceful," she said. "It is," he replied. Mara yawned softly, trying to hide it with her hand. Ethan noticed. "You should rest," he said gently. "It's been a long day for you." She didn't argue. "You're probably right." As she lay down, Ethan dimmed the lamp but left a soft light glowing near the door in case she needed to get up in the night. Before he stepped out, she spoke again. "Ethan." "Yes?" "Thank you. Again. You don't know what this means to me." He paused, his hand resting on the doorframe. "You're safe here. That's all that matters." When he left the room, he walked toward the kitchen and stood by the window, staring out at the quiet night. He felt a mix of emotions: responsibility, curiosity, and something else that felt warm but unfamiliar. He had lived many years in peaceful silence, but now every corner of the house held a new feeling, like the beginning of something deeper. Not love, not yet, but something hopeful, something gentle. The next morning, Ethan woke early, as always, but when he reached the kitchen, he found Mara already there, wrapped in her shawl, seated at the table with her hands resting around a cup of tea he didn't remember making. She smiled slightly. "I woke early. The baby kicks a lot in the mornings." Ethan nodded. "I hope you slept well." "I did," she said. "Better than I have in weeks." Her eyes drifted to the window. "Your ranch is beautiful in daylight." Ethan looked outside too. Sunlight touched the fields with soft golden color. Birds flew overhead, calling to one another in gentle melodies. "It's peaceful," he agreed. Mara seemed calmer today, though still a little guarded. She moved slowly, carefully, her steps steady but cautious. Ethan wondered what struggles she carried before arriving here, and what stories remained unspoken. As the morning went on, Ethan went outside to begin his chores. To his surprise, Mara appeared in the doorway, watching him with interest. "You don't need to help," he said kindly. "I know," she replied. But I want to understand the place I'm staying in." He nodded and continued working while explaining what he did. She listened quietly, asking small questions now and then. Her curiosity wasn't intrusive. It felt natural, like someone trying to find her place in a world unfamiliar to her. Later, she sat on a comfortable chair outside the barn, enjoying the fresh air while Ethan fed the animals. Sometimes she placed her hands gently on her belly, smiling softly at the baby's movements. Ethan saw those small moments and felt a tender respect for her strength. As days passed, a gentle trust grew between them, not suddenly, but slowly, like a seed taking root. Mara didn't share everything about her past, but little by little she revealed fragments. Her journey, the struggles she faced, the times she felt unsure of her future. Ethan listened without judgment, simply offering presence and calmness. In return, Ethan opened up a little too. He spoke about the ranch, his parents, the quiet life he led, and the challenges he faced managing everything alone. Mara listened with a warmth that made him feel seen in a way he hadn't felt in years. Their connection wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was something lighter, softer, trust-forming between two people who had lived very different lives, but somehow understood loneliness in the same way. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, Mara stood with Ethan on the porch. "This place," she said, "it feels healing." "I'm glad," he said. She smiled gently. "I'm starting to feel safe again." And that was the moment Ethan realized something important. Her presence didn't just fill the house. It filled something inside him. Something he had forgotten, could feel warm. The days passed gently on the ranch, each one settling into a peaceful rhythm that made Mara feel calmer than she had felt in a long time. Ethan worked around the land with steady patience, and Mara settled into her new routine, helping where she could, resting when she needed, and slowly learning to breathe freely again. The quiet beauty of the ranch wrapped around her like a warm blanket, giving her space to heal both physically and emotionally. Ethan noticed how her shoulders began to relax over time, how her laughter, soft and shy at first, became more frequent. He grew used to seeing her on the porch in the mornings, hands resting on her belly while she hummed to her baby. Sometimes she would join him on short walks to the barn, moving slowly but determinedly. Other days, she sat by the window, watching the sunlight shift across the fields. For the first time in many years, Ethan did not feel alone. Still, even in this gentle comfort, a quiet tension lived in the back of his mind. He knew that life rarely stayed simple, and he sensed, though Mara tried to hide it, that she carried memories and worries she had not fully shared. One mild afternoon, while Ethan repaired a fence near the edge of the property, Mara approached him with a small smile and a bowl of warm stew she insisted he take a break to eat. "You work too hard," she teased softly. He smiled. "Ranch doesn't run itself." She sat beside him on a fallen log, holding her belly as she eased herself down. "I'm grateful for everything you've done," she said gently. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there that night." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "You don't owe me anything, Mara. You're safe here because it was the right thing to do." Her eyes softened. "Still, thank you." Their conversation drifted into something warm and familiar, the kind that made the afternoon pass quietly and comfortably. But while they talked, Ethan couldn't help noticing the way Mara kept glancing at the road beyond the fence. It wasn't fear, more like a memory she didn't want to face but couldn't forget. He didn't press her. He believed she would share her story when she felt ready. That evening, as the sun set behind lavender-colored clouds, Mara finally opened up about her past. They sat on the porch with warm tea in hand, the quiet sound of crickets singing in the background. "I wasn't always traveling with Carl," she began slowly. "I met him during a time when everything felt confusing. He helped me when I had nowhere to go. He wasn't perfect, but he was kind in the ways he knew how." Ethan listened quietly. We moved from place to place, trying to find somewhere to stay. But we had little money, and things became harder as my pregnancy progressed. She took a soft breath. Carl meant well, but he didn't know how to take care of someone who needed more than he could give. He panicked, and he made choices that weren't the best. She didn't speak with anger, only sadness. "That's why he wanted to find someone better for me," she said. "And when he saw you, he believed you could give me what he couldn't." Ethan felt a heaviness in his chest, not out of guilt, but out of compassion. Mara wasn't someone who blamed others easily. Her gentle nature made her understanding, even toward people who struggled to help her. "Mara," he said softly, "you're strong. You've handled more than most people ever will." She looked down at her hands, her expression humble. "I didn't feel strong. Not until I came here." Her confession deepened the bond between them. Quiet, steady, and rooted in trust. But just as peace seemed to settle, life shifted in a way neither of them expected. It began one morning when Ethan stepped outside to feed the horses and noticed a familiar wagon coming down the long dirt road leading to the ranch. He froze. The wagon was worn, tired-looking, but unmistakably Carl's. Mara, who stood in the doorway folding laundry, followed Ethan's gaze. When she saw the wagon, her breath caught. Her hand instinctively moved to her belly. Carl pulled the wagon to a stop near the porch. He stepped down slowly, looking exhausted but more steady than Ethan had ever seen him. His clothes were cleaner, his face shaved, his posture calm. Ethan approached him carefully, not in fear but in concern. Carl raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said gently. "I came to talk." Mara stepped forward, her face full of mixed emotion. Relief, confusion, and a quiet kind of hopefulness. "Carl, are you all right?" she asked. He nodded, though his eyes shone with genuine weariness. "Better than before. I left that night because I needed to fix myself. I realized I wasn't the kind of person who could support you the way you deserved." He paused, looking down. "But I also realized I needed to make sure you were safe, truly safe." He looked up at Ethan with deep gratitude. "And you did that. You kept your word." Ethan nodded once, letting Carl know he respected him. Carl took a slow breath. "Mara, I didn't come to take you away. I'm not here to undo anything. I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry." His voice trembled with honesty. You trusted me, and I wasn't strong enough to carry that trust. But I'm trying to become better." Tears welled in Mara's eyes, not from pain, but from the emotional weight of someone finally acknowledging something she had long buried. "Carl," she whispered, "you did your best with what you had. I'm grateful for what you did for me." Carl smiled sadly. "I shouldn't have let things get so bad. But I see now, you're where you belong, with someone who can give you a real home." Ethan didn't react outwardly, but something warm bloomed in his chest, something protective, something gentle. Mara stepped closer to Carl. "Thank you for coming back to say this. It means more than you know." "I'll be going now," Carl said, stepping back. "I just wanted to set things right before moving on." But Mara gently placed a hand on his arm. "Will you stay for lunch? You've traveled a long way." Carl hesitated, then nodded. Inside the house, the three shared a quiet meal. It wasn't awkward. It felt like closure. Carl spoke of his plans to find steady work in another town, maybe start fresh. Mara encouraged him with soft, supportive words. Ethan respected his courage to return, something many people would never do. After lunch, Carl stood and looked at them both. "You two, you have something rare here," he said with a gentle smile. "A safe place, a peaceful home, and something else I can't quite name, but I can feel it." Mara blushed softly. Ethan looked down, unsure how to respond. Carl touched Mara's shoulder lightly. "I hope your baby grows up surrounded by all the love and warmth this place can offer." Then he turned to Ethan. "Take care of her, I know you already do." Ethan met his eyes and nodded solemnly. "I will." They walked outside together as Carl prepared to leave. Mara hugged him gently, wishing him well. Then he climbed onto his wagon and rode down the dirt road, the wheels creaking softly as the distance grew between them. Mara watched until he disappeared. Her expression was peaceful now, no longer burdened by unresolved emotions. Ethan walked up beside her. "You okay?" "Yes," she whispered. "Better than I've been in a long time." They stood quietly side by side, watching the horizon where the wagon had vanished. In that moment, something changed inside both of them. Carl's visit hadn't brought fear, it brought clarity. It revealed truths they had not spoken aloud. Mara trusted Ethan deeply. Ethan cared for Mara in a way that felt more meaningful than simple responsibility, and both realized that the connection between them was no longer just circumstance. It was something chosen, something growing. That evening, as they stood on the porch watching the last colors of sunset fade into twilight, Mara spoke softly. "Ethan, I feel safe with you. I feel like I'm finally home." Ethan's heart tightened at the words. He looked at her, seeing not a burden, not a duty, but a gentle light that had warmed every quiet corner of his life. "You are home," he said softly. Mara smiled, tears shining in her eyes, tears of relief, gratitude, and new beginnings. At that moment, a gentle breeze brushed past them, carrying the scent of blooming grass and cool evening air. The fields glowed faintly under the rising moon. The ranch seemed to breathe with them, steady and hopeful. Ethan didn't know what the future would hold, but he felt certain of one thing. Mara and her baby were meant to be here. And perhaps in time, they were meant to be a family. The winter arrived slowly on the ranch, starting with a few soft flakes drifting through the air, melting the moment they touched the ground. Soon the mornings grew cooler, the winds carried a colder edge, and the wide fields turned a gentle shade of pale gold. Mara watched the changing season with a calmness she had never known before. She wrapped herself in warm shawls, moved carefully as her pregnancy neared its final weeks, and spent quiet evenings beside the fireplace, sipping warm tea. Ethan noticed how her steps grew slower, how she paused more often to rest her hands on her belly, feeling the steady movements of the baby. He made sure the house was warm, the pantry full, and everything she might need placed within easy reach. He built extra fires in the hearth each night and checked the ranch paths daily to make sure they were safe to walk on. During those weeks, the connection between them grew deeper. Gently, naturally, without either of them trying. They shared more conversations, more quiet moments, and more understanding looks that spoke volumes without using words. Mara smiled more often, and Ethan found himself smiling too, even during long, tiring workdays. Sometimes he caught himself imagining what life would look like once the baby arrived. Tiny footsteps, soft laughter, new light filling every corner of the house. It made him feel something warm and hopeful, something he had not felt in many years. But even as excitement grew, so did worry. Winter storms in Montana could be unpredictable. The nearest town was miles away, and travel became harder as snow collected on the roads. Ethan prepared everything carefully, but nature had its own plans. It was late one evening when the first real storm arrived. Thick snow fell fast, coating the ground in white. The wind whispered against the windows and icy flakes twirled under the glow of the lantern light. Inside the house, the warmth of the fireplace made the living room glow a comforting orange. Mara sat on the couch, her hands resting gently on her belly while she hummed a quiet tune. Ethan watched her from the doorway, feeling grateful for her presence. The house no longer felt empty. It felt alive, filled with the soft sound of her voice and the gentle rhythm of her steps. "I think the baby likes when I hum," she said with a small smile when she noticed him watching. Ethan smiled back. "I think the baby just likes you." She blushed, her eyes softening. They spent the evening talking quietly about little things, recipes they liked, stories from their childhoods, what the ranch looked like in springtime. Mara listened closely to Ethan's descriptions of wildflowers blooming across the fields and new calves learning to stand. She imagined herself walking through those fields, holding her baby close, feeling sunlight on her face. Just as she closed her eyes, feeling peaceful, a sudden sharp sensation rippled through her belly. It wasn't painful in a frightening way, but strong enough to make her gasp quietly. Ethan immediately stepped closer. "Mara, are you all right?" She took a slow breath, then met his eyes. "I think it's time." His heart tightened. "Time?" She nodded. "The baby is coming." Although the storm outside grew heavier, the house around them became strangely still, as if holding its breath. Ethan remained calm. "All right, let's get you comfortable." He helped her move to the bedroom, placing soft pillows behind her back and bringing warm towels, blankets, and water. He remembered everything the town nurse had taught him a few weeks earlier when he had visited to prepare for this moment. Mara watched him with gratitude in her eyes, touched by how steady he remained. "It's going to be okay," he assured her gently. She nodded, gripping his hand as another wave of pressure washed over her. "I trust you," she whispered. Those words filled Ethan with a strength he didn't know he had. Hours passed slowly. The storm outside grew stronger, but inside the room the air remained warm, lit by a lantern's gentle glow. Mara breathed through each wave with focus and courage. Ethan stayed beside her the entire time, offering his hand, offering calm words, offering the unwavering presence she needed most. Between breaths, she looked at him. "Thank you for being here. There's no place I'd rather be," he replied softly. As time went on, the moments grew more intense, and Mara squeezed his hand tighter. Ethan brushed her hair gently away from her face, whispering encouraging words. "You're strong, Mara, so strong." "I'm trying," she breathed. "You're doing beautifully." Another hour passed, then another. The storm outside eased slowly, leaving only soft flakes drifting from the sky, but Ethan barely noticed. His entire world had narrowed into this small room, this brave woman, and the new life about to enter the world. Finally, after one long, carefully guided moment, the room filled with a small, soft cry, a sound so delicate and precious that Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. Mara gasped softly, her face lighting with relief and joy. The baby had arrived. Ethan gently wrapped the newborn in a warm blanket and handed them to Mara. She held the child close, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Tears of happiness, love, and pure wonder. "Oh," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My baby, my beautiful baby." Ethan watched her with awe. The love on her face made his chest feel full in a way he had never experienced. The baby, tiny and perfect, nestled against Mara's chest, letting out soft, sleepy sounds. "You did it," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You both did." Mara looked up at him, the warm light reflecting in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you." He sat beside her, careful not to disturb the baby, and felt something shift inside him. A gentle but powerful realization. This moment, this tiny new life, this woman he had grown to care for so deeply, they were meant to be here, together. Mara rested her head back against the pillows and carefully guided the baby's small hand into her own. "Would you like to hold the baby?" she asked softly. Ethan stared at her, surprised. "Me?" She smiled. "Yes, you helped bring them into the world. You should hold them too." With tender caution, Ethan lifted the baby into his arms. The newborn seemed even smaller than he imagined, light and warm and full of a new kind of hope that touched every part of him. The baby blinked sleepily, their tiny fingers curling around the edge of Ethan's shirt. His breath caught. For the first time in years, he felt a future opening before him, one filled with laughter, footsteps, shared meals, and a warmth that had never existed in his quiet home before. Mara watched him with gentle affection. "You look like someone who was meant to hold a child," she said softly. Ethan shook his head, overwhelmed. "I never imagined this. Any of this." "Neither did I," Mara whispered. "But life surprises us." After a few minutes, he gently placed the baby back into Mara's arms. She smiled down at the little one, rocking them softly. The glow of the lantern lit her face with a soft warmth that made Ethan's heart feel full. "Have you thought about a name?" he asked. She nodded slowly. I have, but I want you to be part of choosing it." Ethan blinked. "Me?" "Yes," she said. "You're part of this journey too. I want the baby to grow up knowing you're someone important in their life." Emotion tightened Ethan's throat, but he managed a quiet nod. "I'd be honored." They talked softly about names for a while, choosing one that felt gentle and meaningful. When they finally settled on a name they both loved, Mara whispered it lovingly to the sleeping child, sealing the moment with warmth. As dawn began to rise, the storm clouds drifted away, leaving a peaceful, glowing sky. Soft light seeped into the room, brushing across Mara and the baby as they rested together. Ethan stood by the window for a moment, watching the sun climb slowly over the fields. The ranch looked beautiful, fresh, quiet, and covered in a thin blanket of snow that sparkled under the new day. It felt like the world itself had welcomed a new beginning. He turned back toward the bed where Mara lay, her eyes half closed but peaceful, the baby nestled safely against her. "Ethan," she whispered softly. "Yes? I want to stay here," she said. "Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I want this to be our home." The word "our" wrapped around him warmly. He took her hand gently. Then this is your home, yours and the baby's. For as long as you want." A tear slipped down Mara's cheek, but it was a happy one. "Thank you for giving us a place to belong." "You gave me that too," Ethan said quietly. The house, once silent and lonely, now felt whole, filled with new life, new hope, and the gentle promise of a brighter future. As the morning sun grew stronger, the baby stirred softly, letting out a small sound. Mara looked down and smiled, brushing a kiss across the baby's tiny forehead. Ethan watched them, feeling a peace he had never known. The ranch was no longer just his responsibility. It was a home filled with love, a family born not from chance, but from kindness, trust, and the surprising ways life brings people together. And as the new day embraced them, Ethan knew one thing with absolute certainty. Mara and her child hadn't just changed his home. They had changed his heart forever.